Hello again. Welcome to the Unspun Yarn. I'm Nessie, your host, and today I've got two wonderful guests to talk about Sphinxes in mythology. AK, glad to have you. First time on the channel. We've been talking about getting together and doing this for a little while now, but things and life come in between. So I'm really glad that you were able to that we were able to do this today.
Oh, absolutely. Life does not stop for the streams, unfortunately, but we're here now. So we're going to get it done.
Yes. And returning guest, we got Amy Blackfyre there. Amy, glad to see you here. Glad you can come. Glad you're back.
I'm so glad to be here again, Nessie. Thank you and AK, thank you for letting me piggyback off of the stream. I was helping Nessie with some research and I got really excited about it, and she was so lovely to invite me on.
I'm glad you could be here. It gives more voices to the situation.
Right. And welcome to my chat. We've got some new people in. I'm glad to see. Let's see who we have here today. We've got regulars like Leaf and Stephen, I think, is here. Wheezy Squeeze Box. And we have a very special guest in the chat today. That will be Lo Jackco Muir. I'm so glad that they're here.
Thanks for being here, Lo.
Thanks for being here. Really appreciate it. Let's see.
We've also got Monaro Geek TV. Good to see you.
Yeah. Monaro's in the chat, and she's going to be coming on very soon. And we're going to talk some Expanse, which is one of my favorite things besides mythology to talk about. Julie's here, Micah Clark, and it is Micah Clark's name day today. So very happy birthday.
Yeah,
also, hi, Kate, my love.
I will have this sip just for you. Happy name day.
Happy one out for you. Also, Kate, right. My love, I love you.
Oh, Kate. All of our friends are here. So when I broached this topic to Alicia, I think it was back in the beginning of June.
I want to say. Yeah, sounds about right.
Yep, right back at the beginning of June. I never knew that so many good things would have been brought out in the fandom in the preceding months. Because it seems like you get you think about something and then, well, okay. So Amanda, Crowfee's daughter, came out with a discussion on Sphinxes on her channel for its association with Azor High. Lo came out with their very groundbreaking essay with regard to Sarella Sand, and even most recently, poor Quentin on the Nauticast has been discussing a lot of that in one of their Patreon subjects for the. Excuse me. Sorry.
We love you, Left Dad.
Yeah, on one of their Forsaken undertakings. So there's a lot to talk about, and we're all talking about different things, which is great. Which is one thing I love about mythology and symbolism. We can just dig down into the weeds and we all come up with something different, because to me, that's the nature of symbolism. It's all interpretive, what you can see out of it or what you find to be appealing. So
that's why I'm in the library in the negative zone. Because this is just too weird a subject. Like, there's no one place where you just hold down a Sphinx. It's truly a riddle in that sense. It's strange and weird, and it changes on every part of the world you go to. It's just really strange. And hi, Sandry.
Oh, hi. We got a Sandry.
Hey, Sandry.
Hi. Sandry bombing. And Aaron. Oh, yeah. All the girls are here.
Hey, Aaron. Love you, girl.
Well, I mean, we don't know a lot about the Sphinx because it is so. And when I say the Sphinx, I'm talking about the original, which is in Egypt, the great statue of the Sphinx that's on the Giza Plateau. That's millennia old. We have no idea how long it's been there.
There's guesses, but then there's other stuff that's found that says, oh, okay, no, we got to scrap all those and put new guesses out there. So basically, humans just don't know how to say I don't know sometimes.
No, it's like the further they get into it, or new information comes out, or it's looked at from different fields. Like archaeologists say, well, we can date it to at least this far back because of, say, this pharaoh did something and marked and wrote it down. If it, writing it down kind of gives a finite time frame, but it's old, man. it's old.
Yeah.
So,
of all the many wonders of the world that are on that list, what is it, 7 or 8 wonders of the world?
Yeah,
I would posit that the Sphinx is probably the oldest.
It's the oldest, one of the most.
I think you can say that, yeah.
Fairly.
And as someone who's in academia too, people a lot of times really bet their kind of reputations on dating certain things at a certain time. So you really have to, especially Egyptologists, you really have to take everything they say with a grain of salt, because that's their publication that they put out and they said this thing. And so they're really focused on keeping that as, that they're right and others can't be right. And, academia can be kind of frustrating in that way, and that we just want to know the truth and find the truth. But sometimes, they want it to be their truth. So.
Right. Well, it's all ego. It's all about the ego and someone thinking that their idea is the correct one, which we're all a little guilty of that. But, as long as we can discuss it with open minds and have discourse, we can all learn a little something from everybody else.
And Stephen is actually saying in the chat that technically the Sphinx isn't one of the 7 wonders of the world. And you are correct, sir. I'm still going to posit it's older than any of those.
Older than dirt.
I could be wrong, but I'm going to say it's just really freaking old.
It's really old.
It's so old that we really can't date it.
No, and it's one of those things. This doesn't have organic material that we can like carbon date or anything to give an accurate, reading. So it's there. It's older than we are. It's older than our writing. It enters into history when writing enters into history. And the Egyptians were the first, one of the first people to write things down. So, when they started writing things down, hey, we're going to talk about this thing, or we're going to have this image, this icon that represents this huge thing that's, in the middle of our country. So, but it really, like, they kind of start dating it to around, 2500 BCE. We're talking, late, we're talking Bronze Age, at least. And that's kind of how, with Bronze Age trade, you had Egypt, you had Greece, mainland Greece, you had the Mesopotamia. Yeah, Mesopotamia, even as far away as the Indus Valley, they're all trading with one another. They're trading thoughts, they're trading ideas, they're trading materials. So it's getting out this knowledge of this huge giant thing in the middle of the desert. And everybody everywhere has, like, they want to put their own spin on it. They want to have their own interpretation of it. What does it mean? Because, there's smart people everywhere. There's philosophers everywhere. Everyone wants to take it and make it their own, so to speak. So what we do know about the Sphinx is that it is, it's this huge giant sculpture. Currently, it has a human face that has wears the traditional headdress of the pharaoh. And I say the pharaoh because they are all the rulers called the pharaoh. That's their title. And we're not even sure whose face it's wearing, or if that was even the original face. Anyone who's looked at it has probably noticed that the head on the Sphinx is just a little bit disproportional to the rest of the body. So whatever face it bore when it was created, I'm going to kind of stick my name out there and say, yeah, that's probably not what the face is now. So, any thoughts on that? Why they would, take something and change the carving, or
Because that's what humans do. I don't know that there's a better answer than that, and I know that sounds really vague, but when things travel from culture to culture, like the Sphinx, the Sphinx,
I like that one,
like the Sphinx, it's basically acclimated to that region of the world. I mean, if you go far enough, it's in some places not even a Sphinx anymore; it's a manticore.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's what I was saying earlier, you kind of have to put the features with that part of the world, and also not whether it has a human face, but whether it has a face of a ram or another animal. It does always have the headdress of the pharaoh, it seems,
yes.
whether it's human or animal. And sometimes you can't readily tell whether it is male or female, and sometimes it is both, and you can see features of both in them. I was telling the ladies earlier, if you guys want to give me a couple minutes so I can get my randomness out, and then the real info can come in from these two beautiful voices. When looking at the Sphinx, I've always had a great love of Greek mythology. So that's where my main base of knowledge was before going into this deep dive with the ladies. Now, Sphinxes, like we said, they always have a duality. The female version seems to always be given more of the villainous roles, like they're the ones that are doing the real riddle asking, and if you are wrong by the gods, you're gonna die. Sometimes they are meant to go run out and take a contract killing for a random god every now and then. You don't know what's gonna happen with the females. With the males, they generally are a bit tamer. You could say maybe they're depicted as being a bit kinder. They do still have that fierceness, but that heavy malevolence, that evil, quote unquote evil bad, isn't really there when it's talked about with the male form.
Yeah. So there's no patriarchy there. No.
Never
patriarchy. Bad, male good.
What is that?
I mean, the Greeks were known for how open-minded they were when it came.
Of course, they had all. Everyone was equal. Damn it!
Right.
Sarcastic. That is not how it was at all.
Yeah, especially important.
People that know me know I never talk about the patriarchy. So, I really have no idea what you're saying.
Especially if they're importing.
By the way, Dream, AK.
Wait, what happened?
We have a patriarchy drinking game, so drink because he's doing patriarchy.
I didn't know. Thank you for telling me. I'm drinking.
So especially as it's imported like wholeheartedly, part and parcel from Egypt. It says even in the myth that it was summoned from Egypt by one god or another to be this blight on the land. It's also promotes the Sphinx as other, as foreign, as other, and giving it a negative connotation because anything outside of Greece was considered, barbaric, not as high or as advanced, or they were just, primitive, more primitive or less, lesser. There was always a little bit of alienism, when the Greeks would talk about other cultures.
See, that's the thing with Greece, because they would always say, everyone is so barbaric and behind the times and they know the right way. And have you read any of the Greek monster stories? I'm just going to put that feeler out there because I don't think these guys really paid attention. It's one of those ones where we're great, but we're going to turn a blind eye to all of the random nonsense that's in our own stories. And the Sphinx is one of the greatest. A little bit of history for these guys. We don't even know who the parents of the Sphinxes are. And you know where the Greeks go with their monsters? They have lineage upon lineage.
Here, they got a weird family tree.
There's only a few guesses here for the Sphinx. Mm-hmm. The father that seems to be across the board is Orthros, and supposedly he's the father with either one of three: Echidna, Chimera, or Ceto. Stories are conflicted. So let me tell you a little bit about those guys real quick first before we move on, okay? And I'm hoping you guys can see my screen on whatever screens you have. This guy here is Orthros. He is a two-headed dog with supposedly a long whipping tail that might end with the head of the snake. Stories conflict again. We don't know specifically. And then, let me scroll down. We have Echidna. Echidna, this is a half snake, half woman thing. There's no actual saying of what she actually is. And then, let's see, there is one more. Oh, no, there's two more, actually. Chimera, who is usually depicted with just a goat or ram head attached to a lion body. Sometimes there are wings and the dragon, like you see depicted here. And the last one then, actually is one of my favorites, is Keto. And I'm going to scroll down and see if maybe I can get her whole visage on the screen. I may not be able to because it's a big one. But she basically looks like a really cool, badass dragon mermaid type thing. And she's basically the goddess of the Sea of Monsters. And if you remember the small travesty that was Percy Jackson and Sea of Monsters movie, one of the few things that they actually got right is that Poseidon usually doesn't have domain in the Sea of Monsters. So this is Keto. This is why, because she would probably kick him in the face and not care about what any of the other Greek gods would have to say to her about it. So those are those guys. And this is who we think a combination of some of them might be the mother and father of the Sphinx. It's also theorized that Typhon and Echidna is actually one of the mothers of a lot of the Greek monsters. So it makes sense that she would have a kid like the Sphinx with Typhon, because Typhon is also, again, hierarchy of Greek monsters. That guy is responsible for like doing almost all of the dirt when it comes to starting ruckus in the ancient world. So look that guy up if you're interested. He's interesting.
That was in the Titanomachy, which is the war between the Titans and the Olympians.
Yes.
Yes. The Olympians were they were winning. So the Titans released Typhon, and whatever, was so badass that it single-handedly just flattened, the
demolished almost everything.
It was like the primordial destructive nature, of the earth was released to combat the Olympians. It nearly destroyed the earth. So it was only through like this. Anybody fans of Disney who watched Hercules, you might have seen this.
That's the simplest way to explain it.
Yeah, Hercules. I mean, Disney's great on mythology, okay? But the Olympians made this deal, or Zeus made a deal with these other enormous beings called the 100-handed ones, which had been buried in Tartarus. So he would release them on the condition that they would help them defeat Typhon. And of course, Zeus being Zeus, reneged on his word.
Because Zeus is that tricky bastard. He's going to go to the guys that he hates, that he banished to Hades in the first place. Like, hey, yo, come on, no, I was just playing. Come help me out. And then you can walk around with us. Yeah, nah.
Right.
That wasn't happening.
Yeah, so that's Typhon. That's Big Daddy Typhon, who may have fathered some of the most fiercest monsters in the entire Greek pantheon. Like Cerberus was one of the in that same family,
Cerberus is actually like it doesn't say brother or sister. It's just a sibling of Chimera, and also of the Lenian Hydra. Like that doesn't make me think great things when I'm thinking of the Sphinx. Like this is related to all of that. I'm a little scared.
Yeah, but unlike all these other Greek monsters, which were like Hercules had to wipe out about half of them. Other heroes would, defeated them. They were all the other ones were defeated through like force of arms. They had to battle them or
by demigods.
Yeah, like that. Yeah. And it was like, it was their testing of the heroes. If they could defeat these monsters, then, that was their test in their hero's journey. Now, the Sphinx was very, very different because unlike the other monsters, it wasn't defeated by force of arms. You had to outwit it. You had to know the riddle or answer the riddle properly. So it was like intellect, intellect triumphs over the animal bestial nature. So that was
what was it that summoned the Sphinx?
It was either Hera or Ares, depending on which story.
I like to think it's always more Hera there. Yeah. And I know that might feed into the patriarchy of the ladies being meaner, but Hera was petty. I'm just saying she gets the award for pettiest mom. Well, pettiest mom of bastards. I don't like her worse than I don't like Catelyn Stark, and y'all know how I feel about Catelyn.
Right. Well, she was always like the instigator, on say put Hercules up to his 12 labors, or the other heroes like Perseus. She was always this quote unquote jealousy or her little shrewish nature that.
And she didn't even like Zeus all like that. She would just always go off on these kids. Meanwhile, she side-eyeing Zeus like, I can't stand you. Then stop going off on his kids. Go off on him.
She really didn't want to marry the guy,
Exactly. Like, come on, Hera. What are we doing here?
Yeah, I mean, she was kind of forced into it, but she wasn't like happy with the arrangement. So anyway, she is like the instigator in all of the other where these other siblings or monsters in this family are related. So I kind of go with Hera being the instigator on this one as well. It just kind of fits the rest of the motif. But it doesn't really matter, at the end. So you want to get into the riddle of the Sphinx there, Alicia?
I mean, such is the riddle, though. You can't really pinpoint who the parents are. We don't know how old the original monument is. None of the combinations of who the parents are give me great hope for the future of this thing. Even though in most other places of the world, the duality is very sound with Sphinxes. Greek mythology is the only place where you will find there is only ever one Sphinx. And I put that up to Greeks just really like their monsters, and their monsters are always singles. There's never like two of one type of monster. There's always some quirk that makes them different. So that's what I just put that up to Greek culture. Just like I said, further along down the line, Sphinxes aren't even Sphinxes anymore. They're manticores. So it's it's just strange. And we look at all these other places where it's known as a protector. Its duality is very well known. It's very celebrated, and such is the riddle. You can't really put it in one box at all.
No, and like just the nature of the questioning itself is, I think, the purpose, because it has sparked philosophers and religious study, mythology, stories. It is like it's an enigma wrapped up in a mystery inside of a riddle, and maybe just the journey of unwrapping that and taking apart, peeling it back, layer by layer is what we're supposed to do to kind of figure our own selves out, or maybe to understand how to better ourselves, how to become godlike in a way that the Sphinx or the Pharaoh has, or how the Olympian, the Sphinx in the story, the Sphinx dies. Either, but it wasn't the hero that killed it. It was the Sphinx itself.
Mm-hmm.
As though once its purpose was served, that it either did one of two things: either leapt from the perch where it was sitting over the city of, I think it was Thebes, sitting over, watch over the pathway and its little lair, or it actually, in some stories, some of the older stories, it consumed itself. Like it was not, it was defeated intellectually, but physically it killed itself in its own way, consuming itself, like an Ouroboros, or the dragon eating its own, the snake eating its own tail, just that type of imagery, or it just took that giant leap itself. So, and it wasn't.
And I think this idea of, sorry, I was just going to say, you mentioned that the Sphinx is guarding something, guarding a door, and that's the one thing that that transferred completely over to Central and East Asia. This idea of the Sphinx as the Riddler is known in Asia, but it wasn't really integrated into Asian mythology. Instead, it was this idea of the Sphinx guarding the door between life and death, or, being both male and female, right? Being non-binary, being liminal, right? Outside of this space. And I think that's why we find in Asia, they will find sphinxes as funerary objects, and they are usually paired, unlike AK said about the Greeks, where it's only one. In Asia, they're usually together, representing life and death, night and day, this kind of thing. And so we have this idea where the Sphinx is able to have one paw, if you will, one paw in one door and one paw in the other, which is why it's guarding the door. And so you have to answer the riddle in order to pass. And so I think that kind of duality is what makes the Sphinx so queer, if you don't mind me using that term, is because it's not quite comprehensible to our the kind of binary human kind of heterosexual thing that is set up for us, and that would have been very much the accepted way to be throughout history.
Right. Even in ancient Egypt, not all of the Sphinx were particularly male or having male features. It only pertained itself to Pharaoh, whether Pharaoh happened to present as male or whether Pharaoh happened to present as female, especially in the case of Hatshepsut, which is one of my favorite of the ancient Egyptian Pharaoh. They presented as male, so that and with the full headdress, beard, yes, and ruled very, very successfully. It was one of the golden ages of Egyptian civilization. And it wasn't until after their death that their successor completely tried to erase every image of them that they could find. There are very few representations left, but one of them, is a very beautiful image that's in the Metropolitan Museum. And I believe there's another, like one that's completely alabaster. But this, by defacing all of the monuments and images to them, it, in a way, it denied them an afterlife. So it's as though they had been erased from existence. And you got to be pretty hardcore evil to do something like that to somebody, but having been to be completely erased in that.
What was that about the patriarchy again?
Yeah, what was that about?
These people, they had some of the greatest time being ruled by a woman, but we're not going to accept that unless she just dresses up as a man, and then we can look aside, and here comes this young buck a couple generations later. Oh, no, we can't have that in the history. No, men did those things.
No.
Go sit down, little boy. Yeah. That's why no one even really remembers your name that much right now.
Yeah, this is similar to Empress Wu, the only empress of China to rule in her own right. We have very few records of her because they were destroyed, and what records we do have are extremely patriarchal and saying that she was terrible and that she killed all these people. And it was actually quite a golden age for China at the time. So, there's always this idea that women can't possibly be good leaders, and if they are, we have to erase any history of that happening. And, and we'll talk a little bit, I think, about oral history and oral tradition, and that is just as valid as written history. And someone who's in literature, it's kind of hard to argue that because I only focus on things that are written down, but everything we have was originally oral tradition, and we just have this certain version of it. So a lot of the stories in Indian mythology about the Sphinx are oral tradition rather than written down. So it was seen as weird and different and not Indian, and therefore strange.
There's one picture.
Yeah, that's one of
the depiction of so let me say this right. Hatshepsut. Which would be the first female pharaoh who is depicted on the body of the Sphinx with the beard of the male that would have been tied on to her head under her headdress that we also see depicted here.
Yes, all of the trappings of pharaoh.
Yeah.
So there you have, in Egypt, there was a belief of, that the Sphinx was non-binary. It was neither male nor female. It was the straight up depiction of whoever the ruler is. So we also get it was the ram imagery. Those are also connecting the Sphinx ruler to the god Amun. So when the Sphinx wore the head of the ram, with the horns and the headdress, that was equating it with the supreme god at the time in Egypt, the solar god of Amun, or Amun-Ra, as some people know him. And all of that cults centered around Thebes, which was one of the hot spots for religion and cult worship.
City of the living.
Yeah. So if you get a chance, hey, Karnak Temple. Yeah, there you go. There's an avenue just completely lined on both sides with Sphinx imagery.
There's about 6 or 8 of them, I think, all right there at the door. That's the gateway.
Guarding the door.
Or before you walk into Thebes, you have to answer the riddle. And if you can't, well, you're not going anywhere else ever.
You're not going to be, welcomed into the temple. So you have to kind of be initiated and understand, before they don't just let anybody in. You have to be initiated into the mysteries. So it traveled outside of Egypt. We know that it went to Greece for obvious reasons. But Sphinx itself is a Greek name. We're not even sure what the people of Egypt called it themselves. Let's see. I have it written down that there is a possibility.
I think it was shortened. It was Pinks or something like that. If I remember correctly.
One of the in the New Kingdom. Who knows what they called it in the Old Kingdom? One of the New Kingdom names for it was Horam Akhenet, which is Horus on the horizon. So that just as it's facing, facing west, I believe it is.
After the god Horus, which makes sense.
Yeah, but that's just a later adaptation. It's something that they later called it. So we're not even sure what it was originally called. For all we know, it might have originally had the face of a woman. We don't know. Or a lioness. We don't know because it's gone. And it's, and it's possible that, a lot of damage has happened over the millennia. And it's gone through several incarnations of repair work, some of which are very notable because, when rulers do magnificent things, they want it documented. So it's yes, this king at this time, this pharaoh did this thing. And the dream stele, that's one that's very famous, that's kind of sits between the feet of the Sphinx, was done by, I think it was one of the Tutmosis. I think it was the 4th, maybe. But most people know him through the poem.
The 3rd or 4th, yeah. That sounds right.
By Shelley, called Ozymandias, where the prince fell asleep in the desert and was visited in the dream by this being and said, if you clear me out, Uncover me, I will make you the king of the ruler of the land. And so the Sphinx was uncovered. At least it had been buried up to its neck several times. So the head area was always seemed to be exposed to the weather, more weathering, damage, water, what have you. So that being said, it would make more sense to me that the damaged portion in its repair work, they may have altered the face at that time, which would kind of, if you have a statue, and the head's like this, but you've got to trim off some things and make it look right. Say you started out with a lion's face with a mane, but then it's all weathered and you're trying to make something that looks right. You could see a human face with a headdress would work. So, I mean, that's just conjecture.
And also the body shape. You can't really tell what it is because, the sands of time have rewrote, literally the sands of time have rewrote. And you can tell it has a body. That's about it.
Kind of a long body.
Yeah, very long, elongated body. And Monero actually just said something that I agree with. That's probably why they tried to build massive structures to outdo the Sphinx. Because, of course, why wouldn't you try to diminish the power of a woman in the patriarchy?
Why not?
It just is what it is. It just is what it is. And yeah, drink. I said
it. Cheers.
Yep. So even in the story of the the myth of the Sphinx, it's the king is there, and his I think I want to say thieves and thieves. I always get them confused. But the land is plagued, so he's kind of suffering. Like, okay, he's an old king. The land is plagued, and the land and the king's vitality are kind of tied together. So the Sphinx comes in and is, castration imagery there. Symbolically.
You've never talked about castration imagery on this channel. I don't know what you're talking about, Nessie. It's not like I see phallic symbols everywhere since you did that live stream.
Drink.
Phallic symbols in the patriarchy? What? What are those?
Yes. So the king is symbolically castrated because one, his land is under blight and drought and famine, and his vitality is tied with the land. And two, one of the first casualties of the Sphinx was the king's own son, who was supposed to rule after him, but went out and was killed and devoured by the Sphinx. Therefore, he has no legacy because his son is dead. All of his fertility is gone, except for a daughter, but daughters don't count because he offered whomever could defeat the Sphinx would be the next ruler and hey, by the way, you can marry my daughter. Typical,
the random stuff that always gets put in. Yeah, I'll make you the next king and you can marry my daughter.
Mm-hmm,
I don't want to marry him.
What? Well, we're not even going to get into what happens later with Oedipus, okay? That's a whole second chapter, okay? Oh, maybe it wasn't such a good deal. Anyway, originally you get this cycle of sovereignty. The old king is dead, long live the king. The monster, the immortal beast is dead, long live the new, the new gods, the new rulers, the new religion. So, and especially by it being a foreign entity, a foreign religion that has been defeated by, the Greek heroes. Hashtag 20 heroes. Yeah.
The ones who get to write history, are the ones that win. And if I could just say one thing, Nessie, about the headdress, it's of course the pharaoh headdress. And what's interesting is, from what I've seen of Asian sphinxes, which is why I'm here, that's all I know about is Asian stuff. And the Thai sphinxes, the ones that are found in Thailand and in Cambodia, have the headdress that is kind of like it kind of looks a little, I'm not degrading this at all, but their hat that is used for royalty kind of looks like the whip it good, whip it up, that kind of like cone head hat, that kind of like sticking up hat. So really in Thailand and in Vietnam and Cambodia and Laos, they have that. Their Sphinx has the sign of royalty, and yet in China, Japan, and Korea, it's just a symbol of being in between life and death, being in between, being neither male nor female. It's interesting that it keeps the royalty kind of there. It is the headdress right there. Yeah, that's that kind of like sticking up headdress. So that translates to South Asia and Southeast Asia. And yet when we get to just East Asia, talking about China, Japan, and Korea, there is no Sphinx don't have this kind of association with royalty. And I find that really interesting, what stays when it's transferred and what's not. And also, I'll just say one more thing about Asiatic features. There are some really famous Sphinxes in the Louvre right now, but they have been, it's kind of a controversy because they have very Asiatic features, and they're really not even from Central Asia. They're from kind of the northern Egyptian region. And so they're wondering how either if these Asiatic, Sphinxes were transferred to Egypt, or if there was some kind of, this is so long ago, some kind of tribe in Egypt that is since gone that had Asiatic features. So there's a lot of mixing when it comes to the Sphinx, but its idea of being kind of neither and yet both, this kind of in between, is the one thing that has transferred across all of these cultures, and I found that very fascinating.
Yeah, one thing that I also found really interesting, and it's a small thing, but this Burmese Sphinx here, it only has just that one face, and then it branches out to two bodies. So one mind is just taking up these two vessels and going to do the work that needs to be done. I find that
interesting. So you have that duality, and yet the duality is also united. That's very fascinating.
Yes.
So it's neither, it's both, and yet it transcends them both because it has the headship, has the rulership. So that's very, very fascinating about it being a non-binary creature.
And Micah has an interesting point talking about how the Persian manticore could have kind of fused with the Egyptian Sphinx. And I think that's actually would pretty much answer my curiosity. I'm pretty convinced by that argument. That would account for the Asiatic features while keeping the Sphinx body, because everything else about it is exactly like an Egyptian Sphinx except for that face. So that's very interesting, Micah. Thanks for that.
For the man face of the manticore. I wonder why.
Also, when it goes over to Asia, it gets wings, which I don't believe is present in
not
the
all of them
Egyptian
have wings.
Sphinx.
That's correct.
Outside of Egypt,
the Asiatic has the wings, which is and is usually female, but does not have this negative association with it. It's not the evil, scheming female. It's just it's similar to the male Sphinx, and yet they kind of seem to prefer the feminine features in the East, which is, I think, similar to how Avalokitesvara, who was a bodhisattva of compassion, who was a male in India, then turned into a female, Guanyin, in China, which is very interesting. It's very common, which is strange because they're both very patriarchal. It's very interesting that they prefer the female image over the male when it comes to the Sphinx.
That's very, very interesting. See, I know more. That's why I bring Amy on here, because
Amy has that knowledge on the coast, and I love it every time she talks.
I'm bad at it.
I love it. Keep with it, because it's awesome.
That's all I got. That's why I started a blog about Asian imagery and a Song of Ice and Fire. No one else is writing about it, and that's all I know. So I kind of just wedged myself in there.
Yeah, and I guess we'll get to that in a little bit.
Because we've talked about the Greeks. That was my knowledge base there. That was my little one corner.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we all.
Hey, man, put us all together, and you've got a complete analysis.
I don't know about complete, but we can sure talk about some stuff.
Yeah, like Santavia was saying earlier, she came to do some learning. I hope we got a little bit out there that you maybe didn't know. I can't guarantee my knowledge, and I just have a lot of it wrapped up in sarcasm sometimes. So
until I started researching, for this stream, I did not know that there was originally a second riddle of the Sphinx. That it wasn't the one question that it asked about the creature that has one voice and yet walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs in the afternoon, and 3 legs in the evening. That's the one that most people are familiar with.
Common one, I think.
That's the most common one. I was unaware that there was the second riddle, which was there are two sisters. One gives birth to the second, which in turn gives birth to the first. Who are they?
Oh, I already looked it up, so I know the answer. But
Yeah,
isn't the answer?
Yeah,
I don't know
I
the
wouldn't have
answer.
known otherwess. Isn't the
Would
answer?
be-
any
My
guesses?
guess would be like sunset or sunrise, like night and day. Because
It is.
Yeah, night and
It is.
day. Yeah.
It's
And I
night
think
and day.
that it's even better in the original language because night and day are both feminine, I believe. And I don't know which language this was originally, and it might be Greek. But the idea that they're sisters also apparently, if you were using the original language, would help you answer the riddle. And I think
I know where that might be.
And the goddesses
I can't remember
themselves.
Have you guys watched American Gods?
I think Nyx and Eos are the names for for night, and Nox and Nyx and Eos for night and day. In the Greek mythology, so it may be referencing to them. No, I did not watch American Gods, but I am reading the book right now.
Well, you'll get to that part. It's also in the book. They did very good keeping to the book for the show. But there's three sisters that handle that cycle of night, day, and evening.
The Auroras. That's the Auroras.
Yeah. And there's they're Slavic names that they have.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember what they are exactly, but that's where my mind went.
Yeah,
and you had the same thought. Thank you. I feel a bit validated. I appreciate that.
Yeah, they're the three sisters, and I believe yes, they are Slavic. I think they may be Polish. But it's the three Auroras, and I can't remember the names of them myself either. And I've read about them in some other things as well. They're very fascinating. Like one is always asleep. I think
yes. One of them is it's like two awake, one asleep, something like that.
Here, hey, Aaron, thank you.
So Aaron, that's it. Thank you, Aaron.
Yay! 10,000 points to House Aaron. Good job! Yay! All right, well, we're pretty close to about midway, so I'm just going to take a little break. We can all take a little drink. And this is where I do my mid-roll. Now, I don't have a Patreon. I don't have any of those fancy things. I just have friends who come and regularly listen to some of the crazy things that I like to talk about, join in. Leave some interesting things in the chat. And I just want to thank each and every one of you for being here this week. It's been a long time. As you know, I've had some internet woes, which really sucked. But yay, everything seems to be out. Let me find some wood somewhere. Let me find some fake wood to knock, fake wood. So I'm very happy that I was able to come on. I was able to have Alicia on today. I'm very thankful for that. I had Amy on again as well. So thank you all. And I appreciate you spending part of your day with me to talk about my weird, nerdy fascinations. So, Amy, do you currently have anything in the works right now?
I do.
Writing?
Yeah. I'm currently working on an essay about peaches, particularly looking at Renly's peach and also talking about peaches in Chinese literature. I think there's quite a bit there. And after that, and this is according to a Twitter poll that I did, so thank you to everyone who voted. After that, I'm going to be writing about Varys and the many Chinese eunuchs in history that have been given the similar ideas of being sneaky and schemy and power hungry. I'm going to talk about what that might mean for his character. And I'm also, all the links are in the description. I have a YouTube channel where I read my essays. So if you're an audiobook person, you can listen to my very wonderful and soothing voice read them to you. And you can also find my blog there and follow me on Twitter because you can vote in those polls. And this is also, if you have not seen the stream I did with Nessie about monkeys, here's a plug for that because it's amazing. And we talk a little bit about some Hindu mythology as well, which is interesting. And this is kind of an exclusive for you guys. I am thinking about writing a couple of his Dark Materials essays as well, trying to branch out from the Aswaf community. And maybe The Witcher, whatever, just things that I'm reading. If I see something that resonates with Eastern symbolism and mythology, I really want to dive in. So all the links are in the description, and please subscribe and like and all the things that everyone always begs you to do. So thank you very much.
Oh yeah, while you're at it, hit the like, hit the like. If you haven't subscribed,
Yes, hit the like,
all the things.
like.
I'm terrible at self-promotion, terrible at it. So AK, what have you got in the fire going on right now?
Honestly, I don't think I have a whole lot going on. I might have some Expanse stuff coming up. I gotta get with Monero, see where she's at with her schedule. I personally myself don't have anything coming up. I think this was actually my last scheduled thing that I had. So I'll refer you guys back though. Go check out the discussion that me and Robert had a while back, and also what me and Joe Magician had. With, about the Iron Bank and Arya Hota. Those are very fun discussions.
Yes, you've been very busy the last few weeks, and that's great. I knew that you were going to be on Matt's channel, and I was very pleased that you were on Robert's channel as well. So you guys, that was videos. They're great. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Alicia's always great whenever she's a guest. So
I would say sub to all of my friends, because you'll see me on their channels quicker than you'll see me on my own. So
I know I see you on Tony Teflon's channel quite a bit.
Yeah.
So all right, well, I guess we'll get back to it. So you want to talk a little ASWAF, or you want to jump into maybe some weird tarot occult imagery?
Let's go for the weird.
All right, hashtag weird.
I like the weird. Drink to the weird.
Yes. Yes. So, and also in doing some of my research, I dig into things like alchemy and mysticism and occult, because hey, I got a little witchy side to me. So, one of the images that you'll find the Sphinx on is the number 10 of the tarot card, which is, if you don't know, the Wheel of Fortune card. And I find that very fascinating that they have equated the Sphinx into that imagery, because tarot cards are all about symbolic meaning and imagery. So what you have on that particular card, you have the traditional image of the Sphinx, and it's sitting atop the wheel, a wheel. And the Sphinx is in profile. So you see like the profile as it's guarding, but with the face turned toward the viewer. And these are the types of, that imagery is generally seen in art and like votive offerings or offerings to the gods or the temples. So it's a very holy image, as opposed to the guardian image as it's solitary. So there it is in like a rulership position, because it is at the top of the card. Then you have the wheel, which in many cultures, the wheel is symbolism of rebirth, the wheel of time, the passage of time, the wheel of fortune, destiny, samsara in the Hindu mythology or the Buddhist traditions. So the wheel of birth and rebirth, and life, death, and rebirth. It's very worldwide. I mean, like, Christians are one of the few, religions that don't believe in that dumb Christianity.
Yeah, that think linearly, rather than circular. And actually, I was just looking at your notes here, Nessie, and what I find interesting is that it sits atop the wheel. And if we look at the wheel as samsara, then nirvana is how you escape the wheel. And yet the Sphinx is not in nirvana, and it is not within samsara. It is in between. Once again, we have this in between liminal space.
Right.
Love that duality.
Yep. And then to each side of the Sphinx, you'll have two figures, and it could be any particular one. There's a very few. There's some that are particularly used, but like to the right, which would be pulling the wheel forward in perspective to how you're looking at it. You see like the positive aspects. I believe it's like Anubis or Hermes, or these like magician type figures, enlightened beings. And Hermes is always in the Hermes Trismegistus, or thrice great. Anyway, his magician aspect. So
can I give a shout out to Hermes?
Shout out to Hermes. Yeah.
If you go back in Hermes' history, seriously, that's a whole like 3 streams on its own, because he's another one where you can't pinpoint a lot of things. And then he has that duality with Pan that most folks don't know he has, and the doctor symbolism and all that good stuff, the Lord of the Roads and all that.
Yeah.
Hermes is that guy, man. He was that Renaissance god that did like everything.
Everything. Yeah. What anybody else didn't want to do, Hermes was your guy.
He did it.
He did it all. Yeah. He was a Renaissance god in a way. But he was also one of those liminal, occupied those liminal spaces as well. You know, the crossroads particularly invoke that liminal imagery. And as with Monkey, Hermes and Monkey are these magic-like creatures who, you know,
Monkey.
Wisdom. Yeah, love monkeys.
Shout out to that guy too.
Oh gosh, man, that was such. Yeah, we had a great time talking about that.
Slight plug for Overly Sarcastic Productions. Red has been doing the Journey to the West, which is basically Monkey's story. Please go check those videos out.
Awesome. Yeah. Oh yeah. Micah is already on top of that. He had recommended those to me.
Boom.
Yeah. They're fun. They're fun. Hermes the dilettante. Yes, Hermes, he was a Renaissance person. So, and yes, he carried the caduceus, not to be fooled or confused with the rod of Asclepius, which is specific to medicine. But the caduceus has the twin snakes entwined about the central pole. We'll get to that because that's some fascinating imagery just a little bit later. So keep that image in mind. And so back to the card, you have Hermes Trismegistus on one side, which is the positive energy, the transformative energy, kind of like evolution and advancement. And then on the other side, you have, hey, who was that guy we were talking about earlier? Typhon? And he is in like a negative position, and we've talked about him earlier, and he is like destruction incarnate. So that's like an end was destructive, and they fathered a lot of monsters. So he was prolific. Dude got around.
I mean, that's one thing you could say about all the Greeks, though, and this isn't just relegated to just the patriarchy in this form. No, go have a look at what Aphrodite used to be getting up to. Okay, they hopped a lot of beds. The whole Greek pantheon, every last one of them. I don't care how petty Hera got. She had her little digs too. Don't let her fool you.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you've got eternity on your hand, you know things get boring after a while. Drink.
That can also be also connected to fertility, like we see with Garth Greenhand and Aswaf. You know, it's not just lust, which is also fun, and you know, I believe there's one which is the god of wine and lust and this kind of stuff. But it's also about fertility and continuation, which goes back to a cycle, which we were kind of talking about earlier.
Right. And it's the contrast where you have one pulling forward and one pulling backward. So that's turning the wheel. And then below that imagery, you have an aquatic scene. It's water. And we know water is like the well of rebirth, where the womb and tomb meet, where we all go back to and we all come from. And within the eternal ocean, if you can go with that imagery, you have 2 serpents. And we're like the 2 serpents on the caduceus. And one is a positive creative force. So it's called Kundalini. And then there's a negative force. It's called Kuna Buffer, I think. And Kundalini is a very esoteric reference to, it's like having all of your chakras opened up at one time so that you have that energy or chi flowing freely through your body from your root chakra through your head chakra, which is power, the cosmic power, and the ability to achieve enlightenment or the divine. And then of
and
course
that idea, the very top chakra, the Bai Wei, that's where your you achieve enlightenment right within the mind. So to have it fully, like you're saying, the chi flowing up, that opens you up to what is beyond human comprehension, which I think the Sphinx kind of represents being beyond human comprehension. We're able to kind of, its image is so strange and jumbled because it is beyond what we can, what we can understand.
Right.
Hence the riddle.
Yeah. So you have this positive, creative, sexual type energy that is what we should all be striving for, where the negative aspect is it's very selfish, has negative connotations like abuse and, any icky, yucky situation that you can think of. Just negativity. And that is more like of a corrupting nature that just pulls you down into negativity. So you want to advance, you are encouraging to the right word, which is where Hermes and company are turning the wheel to advance you, to evolve you, to become a higher being. And you want to eschew away from the negativity that pulls you back to earthly concerns and earthly considerations and traps. It traps you on the wheel of samsara or suffering. So to transcend, you kind of have to merge your two snakes.
Indeed.
Yes. So
funny how you were just talking about enlightening and how like Sphinxes and Hermes figures were prevalent in that. It just made my mind jump to Prometheus. He tried to enlighten a little bit and he got punished for all eternity for it. That again was being petty. But yeah, that such is mythology.
Right, such is mythology, because only the gods can have power and enlightenment, and when
you can only give it to humans when I say so.
Right. Only when they say so, and their gifts are generally kind of like poisoned. So yes, being the having the blood of a deity as well as being mortal is not always like a good story, for the the mortal or the demigod or what have you, because that just kind of sucks you into fighting above your weight class.
That's one of the things that really made me like excuse me, Rick Riordan's mythology series. Like all of his have to do with the children, the half god, half human children of these gods, and the things they have to go through. Like they're fighting these ancient monsters from damn near the age of like 11 and 12. And how do you get right in your human brain that also still has nodes of your godly powers that you can't figure out yet? So it manifests itself into you having ADD. That's how it would be classified. Like you can't sit still. When you look at writing on the page, it jumbles and turns into weird ancient Greek letters. You don't know what's going on. And yeah, quote unquote Greek letters, right? Like that. And that's how it's depicted. And they have to go to one specific place to get the balance and knowledge and learn how to control those things within themselves. And so they see it as a strength and not a detriment, like they've been told in the human world, which again, I love Rick Riordan because he wrote these books for his son that has ADD and was dealing very badly with it until his dad came up with these stories to help him see the strength in it. That's just
extra dad points.
And exactly. Yeah. That's why he's awesome.
Yeah, so
we've been talking about the associations with the Sphinx and the god. If I could just say something real quick about Hindu mythology, which is anytime you see the Sphinx, they are usually interacting with gods. So you have, there are two very important epics in Hindu mythology, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. So in the Mahabharata, there's a famous scene where a man named Bhima races a Sphinx. So he's actually kind of this man demigod kind of, figure, and he races the Sphinx in order to try and beat it and therefore become more godlike. And then you also have in the Ramayana, you have Rama and Sita, and Rama is a god, and then Sita is his wife. They're going on the road, and they meet a Sphinx along the way. And so there's this idea of kind of gods or people wanting to be godlike kind of coming into contact with the Sphinx. And we also have Vishnu, who is a god who has many different forms. And one of them is a half man, half Asiatic lion figure, which can be interpreted as a Sphinx. And when he is in that form, he's called, oh my gosh, here we go, Narasimha, sorry. And so there are all these different kind of ideas of the godlike being Sphinx-like.
Mm-hmm. And I like the imagery where you have the head of a human being over the body of the animal, which is kind of like the triumph of the intellect, or the integration of the intellect of a human being coming and is able to control their base animal instincts, because we're born into an animalistic nature. We breathe, we eat, we shit, and that's it. That's what we know of life. Much like the riddle of the Sphinx, that is man's general existence in life. You're born, you grow up, you do things, you eat, you shit, and then you grow old. That is, that's how man is. And to escape that animalistic nature, you have to put on the head of a human being over your animalistic nature to achieve godhood or achieve enlightenment. So it's overcoming your own inner nature is very, I think, a lot of what the original, or what the Sphinx was saying, just because of having that human face. Because if you think about all the other imagery coming out of Egypt when they're discussing gods, you have a humanistic figure, the body of a human with the head of an animal, which is, I always thought, wait a second, that's a little different. And then it's the inverse itself when you're talking about Sphinxes. You're having the body of the animal with the head of the human being. So it's really interesting to me why they made that, how they made that choice, especially for, how do you achieve enlightenment, or you become the God King on earth. So how to become a god, because that's what Pharaoh was. Pharaoh was the avatar of the god on earth, and their will was the god's will. They spoke for the gods.
So they said.
They participated, they were the god in religious rituals, which were very important to everyday life in, ancient times. These were the things that kept the crops growing. These were the things that kept the Nile flowing, everything in its proper order to achieve Ma'at, which was balance. And correctness was all done through the intermediateship of the Pharaoh with the gods, his family. So.
And yeah, I think it really speaks to a very human feeling that we've had for thousands of years, which is wanting to go beyond human. We want to be better than, or at least the best that we can be. And through achieving godhood, right, we won't need to sacrifice to the gods anymore for what we want. We can create our kind of utopia, our paradise ourselves. And that's something that is just throughout every culture. There are always stories of people doing great things to achieve godhood and bettering either their lives or the lives of their civilization.
Yeah, very much.
So you want to talk a little Aswaf, Nessie?
Well, I mean, it's not like there's anybody in Aswaf, referenced by the name of this. Oh, wait, yes, there is. We have this one. And also, once again, thank you, Lo, for your wonderful essay. And we want to give you shout outs and props because, we couldn't talk about this now, it would be remiss of us not to give you a little shout out there. So you're kind of like honorary part of the stream as well.
I have not,
and I believe that Lo is in the description.
What were you saying?
Yeah, what I'm going to say is literally just regurgitating Lo. So be prepared for that. So I'm going to give it to TLDR, AK.
Let's do it.
So yeah,
All
Lo wrote an amazing essay, and I believe Nessie put the link in the description to their Tumblr where this is from. But they did a really good essay on Alleras / Sarella, who was born female, and they present as male at the Citadel in order to train to become a maester. And what Lo argues, which I think is a really great contribution to the fandom and to looking at Alleras / Sarella, is that although people say he about this person, that is because it's Westeros and they are very binary. You are a man or you are a woman. But Lo argues in their essay that really Alleras / Sarella is non-binary and transcends the binary, just like the Sphinx, which is why calling Sarella or Alleras the Sphinx is the best way to talk about them, because they are neither he nor she. And once we understand that they're transcending the binary, then they become, I believe, really the only character in Aswath to not be, strictly male or female. And obviously, this is a really short kind of, argument. Lo makes a lot more very, I would say, nuanced arguments in their essay. And so I definitely encourage you guys to read it in full. I read as quickly as I can, so I'm sure I missed a couple of things. But I think their contribution really was this idea of, we really have a non-binary character in A Song of Ice and Fire, and yet it's really downplayed because they are called he and him. And so that might say a little bit about gender in Westeros, but I think it also says a lot about the Westeros kind of idea that only men can be smart and can be maesters, which we know is obviously not true. And so it really shows that patriarchy, right? And so it really shows that Alleras, transcends this binary. And so they transcend any criticisms of being a male or a female. And they are neither, and yet both, because they transcend it, right? Just like the Sphinx. And so I think Lo obviously would put this much more eloquently than I have, but their essay is very much more detailed and uses a lot of queer theory in very engaging ways that is easy to understand. And I've read some queer theory; it can get a little complicated, but I think Lo, they do just an amazing job with kind of explaining queer theory and applying it to Aswath, which can be a little difficult sometimes. But I think in the case of the Sphinx being Alleras / Sarella, they have done a really great job in this essay.
And I think one of the main things that I took away from that essay was that they themselves aren't the ones that are placing the label upon them. They, Sarella / Alleras presents as they are and lets everyone else around them make their own assumptions. So,
you know what? It's fitting that someone from Dorne is who's doing that.
Oh, absolutely.
In Westeros, it is absolutely fitting that it's a Dornish person that is in that role. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe Lo makes a very good point in their essay that I believe Sarella is also half Black. So there's also a person of color queer theory that can apply to this. There's also a little bit of extra danger in presenting as male while being female, because they are also a person of color, which means they are even more likely to be the victim of violence.
Right. Yeah, talk about somebody that was slinging around Westeros over and got all of the 8s like several times and then some.
Yeah, because Sarella / Alleras already is, I mean, in that particular scene at the inn there, with the cider house, what was the name of it? The Quill and Tankard. At the particular Quill and Tankard scene in the prologue, they are even there is even like racial slurring going on because of their, your father was, so you got with a Southern Islander, and there's that negativity already being projected towards them. And so it's pretty, to add on top of that another type of otherness, which would make them even less conforming to traditional Westerosi standards. That really is.
That goes to show, I think, in that world, a lot of what not only women, but what women of color have to do to stand out. Like, they have to go to extremes. Like, let's take the Black Pearl. The Black Pearl unfortunately would not have the name she has if she was not a consort of Aegon IV, as well as a badass pirate queen.
Hey, hashtag pirate queens.
Right? You have to go to the action. Like if you're gonna do a thing, you need to really do a thing to stand out. And that's why the Sphinx is in the Citadel doing what they're doing. So it's interesting, and
Exactly.
Doran always says, well, let the Sphinx play that little game that they're playing, and we'll see where that goes. That's the only one of the kids that he doesn't straight wrangle and yoke up and put in the tower to bend them to his will, so to speak, is the Sphinx. It's interesting.
Yeah, the Sphinx is staying out of politics, staying out of the games that are being played back home. They're
playing a new game.
They're playing a new game, correct?
And Doran likes it, so he's letting it happen.
Right.
And the game master Doran is letting that happen.
I mean,
Anna makes a good point in the chat. This all works if Sarella is Alleras, but I think most fans agree it's pretty transparent that it is indeed Sarella presenting as male. And Aaron also makes a good point in the chat that all of the sand snakes, there really is quite a kind of a many different gender expressions going on. That really none of the sand snakes are stereotypically cis female, exactly living up to, except for maybe the youngest ones, but they're too young for us to really know for sure. But they don't really match up to the gender, the expectation for female. Outside of Dorne, though, Dorne is a little bit more open-minded, we know. And I think also something that is interesting about that also is that, what really for me confirms that is Alleras or Sarella is that, Doran basically says, like AK was saying, oh, she's off doing her own thing. And of course he uses she, which we know isn't correct in this case. But so there's this idea of kind of the Sphinx being outside of like human or the Game of Thrones, the human, it's beyond time and beyond our petty human, desires and gripes, basically. Yeah. And that's what I think makes Alleras more the Sphinx, more than just being non-binary. They seem to be above everything that's going on, right? There's that one scene where they're constantly saying, throw an apple and I'm going to shoot it, when there's like real crazy crap going on. And it's like, dude, pay attention. Like, there's this crazy wizard and all this stuff going on. And like, there may be a faceless man and, and they're just like, I want to shoot this apple. And so it's just, the Sphinx
they're doing their own thing,
right?
Yeah.
Doing their own thing. Exactly. And so the Sphinx is above it all.
Yeah. The other students are engaging in these petty arguments. They're talking about this. They're talking about, rumors and just feeding into that gossip, that little nitpicky gossip that, of course men don't engage in, but, and there's rumors of Sphinxes and dragons. There's rumors of dragons in Karth. It has 3 heads. There's 3 dragons. There's all these things that are, and the Sphinx is just sitting there minding their own business, playing their own game. Like you had mentioned, Alicia, they're just playing their own game. They're not
biding their time.
Biding their time.
It's for a reason. We just don't understand it yet.
Right. And it's just, and they are going to be, they're hooked in with Marwyn the Mage. Oh crap. Like if anybody is going to know what's, the real lowdown deal of what's going on in Westeros, as far as, they get word of the White Walkers at the same time, they are in there with Marwyn when Sam makes his report.
More specific to the term, if any maester really knows anything about what's really going on, if you want to listen to any of the quote unquote gray rats, Marwyn is the only one who you should really be talking to. Honestly, he's the only one that does not care about the agenda of the Citadel. He is looking at those higher magics, so to speak. And he is on his way to Dany right now because that's where the true power is. And he knows it.
Yes.
Right.
And he can see the whole game board, not just parts of it, right? He's seeing the meta view.
He's a Doran level figure. When he's thinking about the game, he's looking at the whole game.
He's 10 steps ahead.
Yeah.
He's got the bigger world picture because he doesn't ignore what's going on outside of the walls of academia. Like Amy, you were saying earlier when we were discussing the theories of the age of the Sphinx and how academics will hang their entire career off of they did this thing, and their reputation is based on that. So the maesters at the Citadel that are a little more out there are trying to, not the traditional Westerosi thought about, most of the maesters agree on this. Those are the ones that you really should listen to, like Barth, who probably have the skinny on what's really going on, because if the maesters all agree to it, then there's no way it can be, accurate.
And there's also
and what's interesting about the maesters. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, AK.
Go ahead, AK.
Real quick. There's also a reason why all of Barth's books were made to be burned. We know not all of them. There's still a few floating around out there. But there's a reason that what's his name? What was it? Balon the Blessed. There's a reason he wanted those out of there, because the Citadel got in his head about the higher magics and things that people should know and have forgotten, like the North. They forgot a lot.
Or maybe things that
I was
men
just about
should
to
not know and should not mess with.
True enough, but the record needs to be kept and remembered.
Right.
Because, I was just about to actually make a point about that, AK, and that they do have that Valyrian still link in the chain. There was a tradition of learning about magic, the higher mysteries, and yet it's been forgotten. And we have Marwyn, who actually could be considered the most well-rounded and open-minded maester, right? And I think we haven't seen very much from Alleras, but perhaps they are going to be like a mini Marwyn, eventually grow up to be the one who has the Valyrian still, link in their chain, and kind of bring a bit of a bit of a enlightenment we've kind of been talking about. But it's not exactly enlightenment, because it has been known before. It just needs to be relearned. And I think that's what's really interesting about Marwyn, is that he's keeping this tradition alive that is really important and going to become increasingly important to the Aswath timeline. And it's kind of starting to get where it's as if magic and the higher mysteries should be erased, when they actually should be, every single maester should be learning about this right now, because dragons are back and magic has returned.
Right. See, and that's the thing. What's his name? Maester Lewin actually has a Valyrian steel link. So there are a few that are still going and learning enough to where they do enough to get that link. But the way it's being spun after they get it is the problem. Because we saw Maester Lewin tried to downplay a lot of what Bran was trying to ask him questions about, that it wasn't anything and all this other nonsense, when if he was really in there, like if Bran would have had a Marwyn, we probably wouldn't have had to have Bran travel all the way north of the wall to go to freaking Bloodraven.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure Marwyn would have had that all the way together.
He'd have had that sewn up. He's like, dude, I got a book for you.
Easily, like, bro, here, read this
book.
Me after that.
I got, we'll have a little pop quiz later. So yeah, and it's just, Marwyn is not. He's an old town.
That's the thing. You can't have a character like that in the story too much, because it gives away too much of the plot.
Too much of the game.
Exactly.
But it's very interesting. The Old Town plot coming forward is really, really.
That's going to be something I look
forward to. And who do we have coming to Old Town to wreak havoc like Typhon on the face of the earth?
The thing. It's Alexandria. It's going to be Alexandria all over again, and that wonderful library is going to burn. I'm not looking forward.
No, it hurts. It hurts.
No, it hurts.
I can't.
Yeah. And so, as I said earlier, in the Forsaken chapters, where that poor Quentin has been talking about on Nauticast, they make mention there of Sphinxes as well, with Euron, and it's all in Aaron's dream imagery, where he sees Euron and he's in his full-on Valyrian cosplay, and he blows the horn of that hell horn that he has, and dragons and krakens and sphinxes are summoned, and I'm like, okay, now what is this?
And they talk about Valyrian architecture having sphinxes, right? That in the ruins of Valyria, there are a lot of examples of sphinxes, and I believe they talk about that city. I believe it's Vaestothraki, where they have all of the things that the Dothraki have stolen, and Valyrian sphinxes are among them. So we know that they were important to the dragon riders of Valyria back in the day before the.
And they lined Valyrian roads because, we saw that Tyrion, when he was on his journey with Illyrio to meet up with young Griff and company, they see that on the Valyrian road, the Sphinxes guarding the pathway. So it's pretty clear that even in Westeros, the Sphinxes are still fulfilling that traditional role of, guarding the pathways, guarding the roads. Outside the doors to the Citadel, there are a pair of these, and why they call them Valyrian Sphinxes, I don't know.
We don't know anything. It's a few things outside of the Citadel that give me a lot of pause about what's really going on in there. It is the Citadel and like their what's the name, the head church that's down there?
Starry Sept.
The Starry Sept.
The Starry Sept.
Is that it? No, it's the Faith of the Seven Church. That's not the Starry Sept, is it?
I think it is.
It is the Starry Sept. It's in Old Town. Yes.
It's been a while since I've looked it up, but I remember some of the imagery that's described there, and there's talk about like piles of bones and stuff. I'm like, you're supposed to be a church with 7 deities that are supposed to be doing good. What y'all really doing though? I don't know if I believe what you say, what you're actually putting out, man.
Yeah, I mean the faith has kind of been, fairly sketch. It's got its dark side.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did y'all hear my phone? I apologize, Santavia. My bad, man.
I love Impossible so much, AK. So I've been enjoying
why
it.
It's one of my favorite ringtones.
It's so good.
So you have the Sphinxes that are there doing that same job as there's 2 of them. They're guarding the entrance to the Citadel itself, which, of course, by it being a place of learning, is you're crossing one another of those veils from ignorance to knowledge. So passing through between the Sphinxes into higher wisdom and higher knowledge, that's pretty key right there.
And the idea that you need wit in order to answer the riddle and therefore enter, right? So you would need to be smart and ready to learn in order to get into the Citadel. But also you need to have a penis. So there's also that. But,
drink on that.
Well, I mean, present as having a penis, present that way. Whether
or at least fool them enough to think that you are, yeah,
or let them make their own mistake. Just let them think what they wish.
Yeah, that's the thing is, they never went up and said, "Hello, I am a man." They just went and said, "Hey, I want to be a maester," and they looked him up and down and thought that they were presenting as male. And it also shows how easy it is to kind of fool men, right? Like even though brave Dany Flint didn't work out well, she was able to fool people for a long time, thinking that she was a male. And I'll also do a shameless plug. In the future, I'm going to do a Hua Mulan, Dany Flint, Alleras, Sarella essay.
Very nice. So keep an eye on that. Looking forward to that one. Yeah, see, and that's the thing. Yeah, Dany Flint didn't even get caught until stuff started going really hinky sideways at the Night Fort. Otherwise, she probably would have just been written down as a hero because, by this time she would have been dead by age, obviously. But yeah, that's a whole nother area of magic that something that can pierce the veil pretty much is the Night Fort. There's a lot of craziness, but also I think a lot of greatness that probably could have gone down there, and we just don't know all the stories yet. We only hear the bad because it was written by the winners.
Right.
Yes, definitely.
Right. Absolutely. It is. The wall is one of those places that is a liminal space. The barrier between
spot that's built into the wall. The only castle literally etched into the wall, not an outside thing. It's carved into it. And the Black Gate is there. That gate is creepy and strange to me. I'm sorry that this living tree, literal living tree, will talk to you and give you passage on to the next part of the journey. That's strange. Trees aren't supposed to be talking, y'all.
If you can answer its question.
If you can say the right words. And it will know. It can't just be anybody that says the words. It will know whether you're a Night's Watchman or not.
Exactly. It knows if you've taken the vows.
Yep.
Yeah. So there's once again that guarding of the space, right? And you have to say the correct thing in order to have passage through, but not just like AK was pointing out, not just the, oh gosh, I'm sorry, there are sirens. I'm going to mute for a second.
No, you're good. You're good.
Yeah. So you have to be like an initiate into the program. So like being a part of the acolytes and the higher mysteries of the Greek mysteries, or the Egyptian priestly order. You have to be part of the in crowd, you have to know to have that knowledge to pass the test, to pass the gateway. So it's kind of like limiting.
The Black Gate is a reference to Tolkien, I believe. I have not read Tolkien in a long time, so I don't remember what it is, but there is, I think, something in there.
Yeah, the Black Gate, I believe, is the main gate to Sauron's lands.
Mm-hmm.
If I remember correctly.
I think you're correct. Yeah. Yep. I'm sure if John were here.
So that's also a very high fantasy trope. This kind of this gate, which you need to talk to in order to pass through.
Right. There's always like a trick or a secret passage or a secret way into, where you want to go to get to the dragon's treasure, or to find your way through Moria. You have to know the secret passage, the secret gateway. Speak friend and enter.
Speak friend and enter, yeah.
Speak friend and enter. So there's always those passageways that you have to have certain knowledge to pass, to have the that esoteric or that inner knowledge. You have to be you have to know a little something. They're kind of an exclusive club. So.
Yeah, see, magic places like that, like the Night Fort, and there's places in Gagosis, Yin especially, I would love to talk about, because I feel like the whole of Sithorios was basically Valeria's island of Dr. Moreau, and that's why Yin is so screwed up and messy. And I just want to deep dive into those stories, and it's not even stories, because we don't have a whole lot of information, but there's a lot of roadways of thoughts that you could go down talking about those places.
Right. What we have is people went here and bad things happened and they all died.
And now not even the jungle will touch Yin up to a certain point.
Right. And anyone who's ever tried to pass there or to use it as like,
there's a problem that nature doesn't stop going anywhere unless there is really something wrong with the land.
Something going on. Yeah, a curse of some kind. And also in the chat, they have a really interesting question that a lot of people I've heard discuss about the Black Gate, which is, would you have to say your Night's Watch vows in front of a werewood? I want to say no, but at the same time, the Black Gate would have been built when pretty much every Night's Watchman took their vows in front of the werewood before we had the Andal invasion and this kind of the seven becoming the most popular. But at the same time, we don't know, because Sam took it in front of the werewood. So all we've seen is a Night's Watchman was taken the vows in front of the werewood.
Right.
So I want to say no, you don't have to, but I do not have any textual evidence. And as a literary analyst, I hate when I don't have textual evidence, so I can't say for sure.
The implication is there, but it's not a definite.
I want to know what the backside of the Black Gate looks like, because if the front presents as a face, what does the backside?
It's going to be an ass.
Is it a butt?
nice ass right there.
Does it look like?
These are the real questions that we need to be asking.
See, I'm the
real good analysis here.
I'm the strange one that's always fascinated with the tunnels that I think connect everything under Westeros. I want to know what's under the Black Gate. How deep do those roots go?
Oh,
that's my question. How deep do they go? How much do they connect? Because we know that there are tunnels there, and they probably are still in operation, but only very, very few people actually know about them. That's why wildlings are still climbing over the wall to get through. Not everybody knows about those tunnels, but I know they're still there.
Mm-hmm. And that was the
Yes,
thing.
and I know that Egret talks about them in the show, and that a lot of people die in there, so they can never find their way out. So I think even if the free folk know about it, they're afraid to go through there. I also think the tunnels are symbolism for the werenet, the roots that go under Westeros that connects all of the werewoods together. I think it's also kind of a representation of that. And maybe the children of the forest made them. Maybe they were there before them. We don't know.
I think it's definitely has to do with the children, and that's why a lot that those early layers that we're told of the crypts in Winterfell are collapsed, because they connect to all of that. And I think if you go further north, they also connect to the base of the Children of the Forest, where Bloodraven is being held.
Well,
I said being held.
Yeah, Egret was talking about and told us a story about Gendel and Gorm, and how they, traversed underneath the wall through these tunnels. But what's fascinating is how they gained access to the tunnels, which was, I believe, probably, I think it was Gendel, one of the brothers, was asked to mediate between the Children of the Forest and the giants over ownership of a cave, which I find very fascinating.
And Aaron just asked a good question. Said, do you think the Mole Town is part of that? Yes, because there is absolutely no reason for a town in the north to be mostly underground. No reason at all.
Well, I mean, other than its, temperature and whatnot, but yes.
But that's the only one.
Yeah.
That's the only one.
That would be it. And it seems to have been there a long time, and the structures that are built there are kind of shanty, but are newer compared to the actual underground part itself.
The underground
it's like they have way stations that were there, and I think Molestown, I think you're right, Aaron, Molestown is one of them.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where, it was there before, but, when human
beings... We repurposed it for something.
It's ours now. Yeah, we're going to make a mountain out of this molehill. It's ours. And
exactly.
I mean, and if there are tunnels that connect Molestown to, the other tunnels on the wall, hey, that's just a little bit of, ease of access for, doing that digging for buried treasure. So the wormways are there.
For the right people, it's one of those way stations. I mean, I would posit that the Godswood at Winterfell is also something, especially where that one main pool is. But that's sidestepping. Yeah, that's discussions that I would love to have on things and landmarks in the future.
Yeah, hashtag
future streams. The tunnels under Westeros. Definitely coming to you soon.
Yes, indeed. Yes,
anyway,
indeed.
That's all not about the Sphinx, but it's all very fascinating.
It is. Now, if I found a passageway that was guarded on both sides by Sphinxes, hey, that would be very significant.
Yes. Yeah. And they would be guarding from the above ground to the below ground, or the underworld, however you want to kind of look at it. And in China, most of the Sphinxes are found as funerary objects that are buried, in these kind of room upon room of like kind of catacombs. And they're usually paired with other animals as guarding the person, either helping them into the afterlife or warding off evil that would come and disturb their grave. And we have that a lot in Buddhist temples. You have the Sphinx there to ward out evil, but also to purify practitioners who are coming in to meditate and give offerings to the gods.
And that's also a bit of a
neutral, meaning good symbol, whereas in Egypt and Greek, it definitely, or especially Greece, it seems to be leaning a little neutral evil. So
and that's one of those things where I think through different ages, it transfers to something else, like going into the Manticore. That would also transfer into gargoyles above churches. It's for whatever reason widely thought that gargoyles are evil, but their original purpose is to ward off evil. That's why you see so many of them on churches.
Right. Yep. And back to one thing that in the Greek imagery, yes, you have the myth, but when you're talking about the imagery, the pictures, the iconography, the statuary, it comes in two forms. And it depends on what the function that the Sphinx is performing at the time. And when it is in its guardian position, which is the two heads, two silhouettes, two Sphinx facing one another. It's usually on funerary imagery, just like it is in China. That guardian of the grave, the passageway between life and death. But when it is what's called a votive offering, or something that's to be given to the gods or for the use of the gods, it's always a singular Sphinx as opposed to the binary Sphinx. And instead of facing one another, the face is toward the viewer. So that's more like the traditional Sphinx, where it's solitary. And you have those images like there on the headdress of Athena at the Parthenon, that giant statue of Athena there. There's 3 Sphinx across her crown. So that's part of the godhood, the crown, the Sphinx, the godhead, and Athena, the patron of Athens, like the big kahuna in Athens. She gets the Sphinx on her headdress. And also in Olympia, dedicated to Zeus, where instead of being on the crown on the head, I find it very interesting, it is instead on the chair, the throne, the enthroned Zeus at the temple of Olympia, is decorated at the legs and the feet, have that imagery, the Sphinx imagery there. So on the head of Athena, but yet lower below Zeus. So,
I think that's interesting, the posture of them sitting up like that. Oh, that looks great, AK.
That's, if you guys remember, the Sphinx gate from the Neverending Story.
Oh, wow.
Mm.
You had to answer.
Interesting that they're the ones that are sitting up, which is common in Asia for them to be sitting up and have one paw up.
And you can fully see their femininity.
Mm-hmm.
That's broadcasted, and they basically have to. There's no actual riddle for them, but they have to look into your heart and see that you're actually a true good person before they let you pass.
Right. So you have to be found worthy.
Yeah. So once again, guardians of space. Yeah. And if you notice, the Egyptians ones are laying down, whereas the ones from Asia tend to be at attention, right?
They're also
kind
at attention.
Upright.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And notice it has the wings, which would be more with the Asian Sphinx. And I think the Neverending Story with the dragon and everything kind of tends more, if I'm thinking of the right movie, isn't it kind of snake serpent-like Eastern dragon? Yes. So it also leans a little more toward the Asian mythology. So I would say these are definitely more Asian Sphinx with the feminine, the sitting upright, and the wings. And actually my undergrad University of Oklahoma, has a Sphinx outside of our art museum, and it has become very controversial because Sphinx don't wear bras, so it's like full on boob action. And so there have been petitions to take it down. And at some point we're just like, look, it's there. No one likes it. It is kind of ugly, but just the fact that you want us to take it down. Exactly. Boobs. Yeah. So like, we're not going to take it down just because, it's Oklahoma. So everyone's kind of being moralistic about it. And what will the children think? It's like, children eat from boobs. Okay. They know what they are.
The children have Discovery Channel. They know what boobs and sex is when they're 4.
Oh, please don't submit the children. Don't submit the children to the boobs. They might be scarred forever.
They can't stand it. Yeah.
Good boobs are scary.
But so if you want to know, just look University of Oklahoma Art Museum Sphinx, and you'll find a picture of it. It's not the best looking Sphinx, but the point is people want it down, which it means I want it to stay up. So.
Yeah, I mean,
I love your rebellious nature. I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's just weird.
It comes from being raised in a very conservative
family. Yeah. So it's just crazy to me that the human form or the humanoid or form is just sets people free like that. I'm like, I mean, it's just a figure. It's just a body.
But then they're fine with movies where people are getting their heads blown off and everything. Like violence is whatever, but then oh gosh, you dare show a naked person, and it's
how dare you?
It's changing society.
How dare you?
How dare you show a nip? I mean,
free the nipple.
That's why I tend to like.
The official word of the stream is free the nipple.
That's why I tend to like really cheesy movies. Like I just rewatched Scout's Guide to the Zombie Apocalypse. They literally made it a point to make it as cheesy and ridiculous as possible. Like there's a zombie coming around, so yeah, it's got to get their head blown off. But first, it gets trapped in the gate, and their shirt gets pulled, and boobs. You have undead boobs on your screen, but they're undead boobs though. So it shouldn't really be a thing. I mean, there's zombie peens that show up in their full frontal as well. So they take that trope, and it's teenagers that have to go through and survive this thing. So that's why I love the cheese of it. They're throwing everything at you and saying, "Here, deal with it," and we're gonna make you laugh also.
Yeah, I mean, zombie peen. Who would think that would be like hilarious?
Too. So it's even all of the extra that you could think would go into any random cheesy zombie movie. It's in this movie.
Do they fall off? Do the peens fall off?
It literally gets pulled off because it has to be used to hold a boy up instead of him falling onto a trampoline full of zombies. His friends have to clear the trampoline for him, and the only thing he's able to grab onto hanging out the window is this old zombie peen. And he does what he has to do.
Zombie peens save lives.
He did what he had to do, and it ripped off at the end, but he got to safety, and his friend saved him. So, boom.
Yes, I am here for the castration imagery. Yes.
Back to Sphinxes.
Yeah, that was a whole
kind of not wearing clothes, right? Is that they are godlike. They're beyond these human kind of things that make us embarrassed, right? They are perfect in their form, and they are, strong in that form, and they don't feel the need to cover up like humans do.
No, they're beyond that little tawdry little whatever human drive to just no. Mm-mm. And hey, I mean, those are some nice looking Sphinx boobs. If I had nice looking Sphinx boobs like that, I might have,
like Stephen said in the chat, I am pro boobs. I am pro the boobs.
Yeah,
and it doesn't even have to be nice.
It's very pro boobs.
I appreciate all of the boobs. Okay, there's not one boob
all
that is
imperfect.
All of the boobs
are evil. Boobs are not evil. They're
life-giving. Are you serious? They are literally life-giving.
Nurturing.
Rays of light come out of them. They are so beautiful.
They're just a soft place to be.
Yeah.
Monaro.
Monaro, no. Yeah, we're not going to go with the titty force. No. Okay. Stop it. Okay, no, the titty force that you talking about is completely different. Okay, look, you know what? Let me clarify. Since Monero wants to bring that point up.
I remember hearing about this. As long as it's a consensual titty force, then it's good.
But I do not want boobs put upon my person that I did not ask for. Okay, no means no when you're a man or a woman. All right.
Consent is key with the titty force.
Consent is key. Let's get that real. Keep that real.
No random boob rubbing without prior consent.
Thank you.
But Monaro Geek, I'm giving you permission if we ever meet in person. I want that titty force right now, very consensually.
You have volunteers. Why you baby?
I am down for the titty force.
These are my sisters, man. Y'all see what I have to put up with?
Hey, man, that's what family is like.
I guess.
Everybody's
got to deal with all sorts of crap with this here. You know how it is. Got to deal with all your brothers and sisters being cray.
Just it's so absurd sometimes. Kate says they're like beautiful pillows. Yes, they are.
They are so soft,
soft, comforting, nurturing.
They have it all. Really,
they literally have it.
Powerful. They're powerful. They fill the space. They occupy space and dimension, and they're just wonderful. I think everyone should have them if they want.
I think that's the main thing that we get from the analysis of the female Sphinx is that titties are wonderful.
Titties are great.
Yes. And they only add to the wonderness of the Sphinx. Okay, let's be real about that point.
It was great before, but when you add boobs to it,
it's even better. You get that majestic look like you have with the gate of the Sphinxes from the Neverending Story. That's why those things are remembered, because they're so awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that's a good place to stop.
That is a good end.
Hey, end on boobs. Why not? I recommend. Was there
Yes.
anything? Was there anything that either of you wanted to get out there, to, anything you wanted to mention besides boobs and zombie queen or what have you?
Now, just respect your Sphinxes. Respect the Sphinxes. Respect the duality of nature, and down with the patriarchy. Seriously, honestly, I don't even want a full matriarchy. I just want people to be awesome together. Seriously, yes. I'm in full Billings head mode. Just be awesome to each other.
And that's what the Sphinx wants us to do. It's combining and coming together, this masculine and feminine energy, and together we are greater than the sum of our parts. So it's not about this part or that part. It's the whole as one, and coming together to be better than ourselves. Mm-hmm. And if we can do that, hey,
yes.
The world will be a better place.
And the world will be a better place.
And transcending the binary altogether, which makes, what we have look very silly and not necessary. And I just have to plug Glow's essay one more time. They did an amazing job. If you're an Aswa fan, definitely check that out. They did really, really interesting stuff.
Okay, quick question. Leaf Underhill wanted me to ask, because she did ask this in the channel. Talking about the Sphinx. Is it a type of chimera? It is not a type of chimera, but chimera was one of the proposed mothers of the Sphinx. So there is a very close
relation. Yeah,
very close
relation, but it is not a chimera itself.
No, it is not. And yeah, it's not a chimera itself, but it is a very close relative, either mother or sibling. So it's all part of the monster family of Greek mythology, and they're like very close. So they have very close alliances.
Yes, very close relations. Yes.
All right. So I think that's going to wrap it up. Thanks everybody for being here. Amy, we talked about some things you've got coming up. AK, you've been doing some great work with some other content creators. Everybody needs to watch those.
Thank you. I hope that I can be informative sometimes. A lot of times, like I said, I'm just sarcastic in my thinking of how the ancient world went about doing things, and I'm just glad people like to listen to me ramble.
Oh, we certainly do here at the Unspun Yarn. You're welcome back anytime. Got some cool things coming up on the channel. Got some more guests coming. We're going to do a little bit more Expanse content, because that seems to be like, hey, that's my other jam. So when I'm not, yakking about mythology and castration and things like that, I like to talk about the Expanse. So the
Expanse is awesome.
The Expanse is great. They have transcended the binary. I love them.
Really. And can I just say one thing, Nessie, real quick? I know you probably think, oh, this girl writes about China and Chinese literature. I have a very strict 6-page limit on my essays. They are very short, very easy to understand. I assume you know nothing about Asian mythology when I write. And if you don't like to read, I make videos on my YouTube channel of me reading them. So you literally do not have to work to listen to what I spend hours working on. So I put a lot of work into these essays, and it's all for you guys.
Can someone put Amy's YouTube channel in the chat? I don't see it in the description.
I did not
like to sub, please.
Oh, all right, mods. Get on the mod squad.
Mods, get on it.
Get on it, if you would please. Drop Amy's link to her YouTube channel in the description. I would greatly appreciate it.
And if you go to my Twitter, it's in my bio and Twitter. You can also go to my blog, and there's a link to the YouTube channel in the blog. So more clicks, but if a mod could drop a link right there and it's only one click, that would be the best.
Thank you, Sir Stephen. Appreciate you.
Yes, Stephen is the best. Yes, so coming up soon, this Sunday on the Here Be Dragons channel, we have special guests coming on, Monaro Geek, who is in the chat, and we are going to be talking about my bae, Sarella, She is wonderful.
Oh,
She
that's
is
so
like queen of the expanse. And we're going to have a
And
supplemental
God, dang, does
episode.
she look good, Miss Sorry. Ooh, she looks amazing.
Ooh, that woman, she's
she is in
Knows
the
how to
same
dress.
league as Helen
Fashion.
Mirren in my book. That they can get it. I don't age
Definitely.
discriminate. If you look good, you look
No,
good.
no.
oh, she
Girls or
looks
women even
Mhm.
gracefully.
she looks real good, especially in that space flight suit for
No, child.
yes. And then we're gonna have a
Let me
follow-up.
shut up right now.
We're gonna have a follow-up episode on my channel, and it's titled the Sarella Bling Fest, and we are going to be discussing the other character of the Expanse, which doesn't have its own name, but is Sarella's bodacious wardrobe. I mean, that wardrobe is
She can dress, boy. There are some characters in shows that just have the best wardrobes, and yeah, she's one of them.
She's one of them. I mean, her costuming is just phenomenal, and each one of those outfits tells a story. And we'll be getting into that with Monara's coming on my channel as
what
well.
What day is this again, please?
Oh man, now you want to ask me complicated things? I believe it is.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Now
I
we want details, Nessie.
Okay, all right. Do you want details? I'll get details. I have it here. The Sarella Bling Fest is going to be August the 12th.
August 12th.
Okay. Yes, August the 9th is the Sarella character analysis on
Excellent.
Here Be Dragons channel. So we've got both of those coming up. It's going to be Sarella Love Fest.
Good stuff.
Yes, that woman deserves 2 streams. There's just enough of her for all of that.
Yes,
all right, so I think that's going to be it. I appreciate everybody coming to hear us talk about these things today.
Thanks,
and
guys.
We'll see you in the next one.
Thank you.
Bye.
Hasta.